Bhagavad Gita Sloka 2.59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate.
Vishaya
vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. You can recite after me now. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Once more. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Word for word meaning and translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Vishayah, objects for sense enjoyment. Vinivartante, are practiced to be refrained from. Niraharasya, by negative restrictions. Dehinah, for the embodied. Rasavarjam, giving up the taste. Rasaha, sense of enjoyment. Api, although there is. Asya, his. Param, far superior things. Drishtva, by experiencing. Nivartate, he ceases from. Translation. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. but seizing such engagements
But seizing such engagements
by experiencing a higher taste,
by
experiencing a higher taste,
he is fixed in consciousness.
he is fixed in consciousness.
consciousness. Yes.
So Lord Krishna talked about how when the senses impact you with all the different sense objects, one can resist that temptation just like a tortoise withdraws its limbs within its shell. That was the last shloka that we read last week in 2.58. Now, after telling us that if one does not want to come under the influence of our material senses, then we need to withdraw it, and we should learn how to use the senses in Krishna's service. Here, Lord Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that actually, even if you withdraw your limbs into the shell, it doesn't mean the threat outside has disappeared. What that means is that even though we may use our senses in the services of the Lord, your mind, which is considered the sixth sense by Lord Krishna, it is still going to be subject to temptations. So Lord Krishna is saying, so let us say we'll take a very simple example. You like having coffee first thing in the morning. And you have learned from those who are preaching Krishna consciousness that you should give up having coffee because it's considered an addictive, a stimulant. It stimulates your senses. And we don't want anything that unnecessarily stimulates our senses towards that forces us to gravitate towards material enjoyment. So Krishna is saying here that your taste, so let us say you have conquered giving up coffee. But that doesn't mean that you may not think about coffee in the future. You may remember that, yes, when you drank coffee, the taste was very nice. You enjoyed it. Maybe it calmed you down, or maybe it gave you more energy because it's a stimulant. So it is going to give you more energy. That is why people drink coffee if they want to stay awake. There are drinks sold in the market in cans that has a high degree of caffeine. And I know, at least in the US, that students drink this, what do they call it? Red Bull or something like that. It's highly caffeinated. It keeps you awake for a long time. So students who are looking to pull an all-nighter because they have an exam the following day, they do all kinds of things. So they may drink these kind of drinks that are very high in caffeine that keeps you awake. So Krishna is saying the only way you can resist these temptations that your senses have become used to is when you substitute it with something that is better, something that is more enjoyable. So one could say waking up early in the morning and chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is far more enjoyable way to wake up than to wake up to a cup of coffee. So when you really experience the joy of chanting, then you are ready to give up the lower tastes. So if you recall from our Gita Sandesh class, we talked about lower tastes and higher tastes. Higher tastes are all to do with the spiritual world, spirituality. So when you develop a taste for chanting, when you develop a taste for listening to Harikatha, and as Ramakrishna Prabhu said in yesterday's beautiful class on the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, that Prahlad Maharaj is telling Lord Narasimha, the reason we think of you, the reason we worship you The reason we chant your holy names is really to purify ourselves. Because you are Atma Ram, you don't need anything from us. So similarly, when we experience the higher taste of chanting, of listening to Bhagavad Gita, of reciting shlokas, slowly your taste for other things like tea, coffee, whatever it is, alcohol, your drink of choice, will be subdued. But Krishna is saying, make no mistake, you will remember those things, but you will no longer be tempted by those things, because you have now experienced something that is far more valuable for you, that brings you far greater joy, that brings you higher levels of energy, maybe a sense of wakefulness, that higher levels of concentration. You do get all of that by chanting. So chanting is a good substitute for drinking tea and coffee and other things. It does give you the same benefits, rather I should say better benefits, because these benefits are eternal. The benefits are permanent. Whereas all the other sensory objects that we tend to enjoy is impermanent. So all Krishna is saying here is that while we may try to restrict our senses, the taste for those objects will stay. But the only way you can control your material tastes is to replace it with spiritual tastes. So that is the essence of this shloka 2.59.